I'm not a frustrated person at all. I have a feeling of, if I may say so, a certain satisfaction with the opportunities I have had in life. And so I have no sense of frustration, but undoubtedly there's a feeling of loneliness which creeps upon one. I'd always thought that that would be rather normal, almost, that feeling, for many people who are sensitive. And it's a curious thing, how in the middle of a crowd, I am one of the crowd and yet apart from it.
I'm Arnold Michaelis. Here in India, the big question hanging over this house, the official residence of India's Prime Minister, is just who is the next occupant of this house going to be. Whoever fills this post is not, unfortunately, going to be able to fill the role played by this quixotic, delightful, and to us Americans, sometimes irritating, but always charming man. What is the essence of Jawaharlal Nehru? This lighter side is a lesser-known facet, but the world's appraisal abounds in contradiction. As the leader of the neutrals and the non-aligned, as the pilot of India's endless millions, he has been characterized as everything from a saint to a devil, from a democrat to a dictator. Nehru, among world's leaders, is the philosopher-politician, a combination to which his detractors attribute an aloofness, a lack of candor, an intellectual snobbishness. But here at his official home in New Delhi, this aristocratic Kashmiri Brahmin has periodically escaped from the pressures of the Prime Minister to his cherished role of father and grandfather. His daughter, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, and her two sons have provided the family atmosphere for Mr. Nehru since the death of his wife in 1939. He has given to his grandsons in person what he gave to his daughter in writing throughout his 9 years' imprisonment during India's fight for independence. The rewards of this 30-year struggle came on August 15, 1947, as the last British Viceroy, Admiral Lord Louis Mountbatten, read the proclamation which gave birth to the new Republic of India and brought an end to the 200 years of British rule. No other father in all history educated his daughter through letters from prison. For Nehru, prison provided the enforced leisure in which he wrote much of his autobiography in memory of his wife, Kamala, and where his thoughts live with those who most influenced him, his wife, of course, his father. India's greatest poet, Rabindranath Tagore, Albert Einstein, George Bernard Shaw, Abraham Lincoln, and his teacher, friend, and beloved leader, the immortal Gandhi. Independence brought not only rewards, but unimagined violence and tragedy. And the greatest tragedy, the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. The manner of his death, said Nehru, was the culmination and perfect climax to an astonishing career. The message he embodied will endure and grow in the understanding of man. We miss profoundly the living fire that was in this man of peace and humility, this man whose eyes were often full of laughter and yet were pools of infinite sadness. To us who knew him, Nehru said, he will remain a radiant and beloved figure who ennobled us and gave us significance to our petty lives, and whose passing has left us with a feeling of emptiness and loneliness. As with the Pitts of England and the Roosevelts of America, the Nehrus of India were quite at home on the center of the world stage. Nehru's policy of neutrality in the Cold War and independence in the conduct of international affairs made him one of the most sought after of all the world's leaders. He offered friendship to all, regardless of differences in policy. He was pleased with the exchange of friendship with Zhou Enlai, and baffled by the reaction of many in the West. But at the Bandung Conference in 1955, this friendship was strengthened. And, as a result, Nehru used India's meager funds to build the country economically instead of militarily. But in a country paved with centuries of poverty, progress is scarcely felt. As Nehru said, the burdens of the past pursue us. Sometimes we feel vital and youthful and full of energy. At other times, thousands of years weigh us down, and we feel old and a little weary at this long and interminable pilgrimage. Both are a part of us and make us what we are, and out of that ceaseless intermingling and conflict, something new is always arising.
They're all mixed up, the new and the old, and we want to retain part of the old and replace the rest with the new.
I notice particularly in the agricultural area that you are still concerned because India, being essentially an agricultural economy, still has to be dependent upon imports of food.
That is so. That worries us a good deal because we want to be not dependent on food from abroad. I think we shall be in a few years' time.
You think you'll be independent?
I think so, yes. We should produce quite enough for our own purposes, and a little more than that.
Have you found that the farmers generally have shown an increased tendency to change old methods? I know that that had been a difficult problem with you in the past.
That is the real difficulty. We have many ordinary ways of increasing the yield, but how to induce 300 million people to do that is a problem. I think they are getting used to the new methods, and that will lead to greater production.
But Mr. Nehru, one of the things that I know has plagued you and plagued India has been the problem of the birth rate, the rise in the population, which has a tendency to negate whatever advances you make agriculturally.
That is so. Of course, all our health program negates it. We have practically put an end to malaria in India, typhoid largely, and people are eating more generally, and people are, they dress better somewhat. All these things are inevitable, and we want them to happen, eating more and dressing better and all that, but they come in the way when population increases. So we are trying our best to have family planning and birth control and all that.
Have you been encouraged by any progress in that direction in recent months?
Yes, the progress is definite, although it takes some time to show results. But the results in India is so big and vast, although we are doing a good deal, it doesn't cover the whole picture. It's not easy to harness the huge manpower of India. We are trying to, but a good deal, take in agriculture, what can be done by a few persons, the holding is done by 2 or 3 times that number. It's not usefully employed, although they are employed. It's underemployment that we suffer from more than actual employment. I suppose every country wants the welfare state because it wants welfare for its citizens. But however much we may produce, the tendency is for what we produce to accumulate with some people not to go out to the others. And so difficulties arise. The gap between those who have and those who have not increases.
Yes. Well, of course, the concentration of the haves versus the have-nots, traditionally and historically, is what must have prompted Marx to write his manifesto.
Marx considered these problems, well, over 100 years ago, when the world was very different, when there was practically no effective governmental control by the people. Like the idea of democracy hadn't spread so much. So I suppose he thought that no change could be brought about except by violence. That is not so now. Democracy gives a method of changing. Also, his idea that the difference will grow between the rich and the poor will become poorer and the rich richer, has been falsified by many things that have happened. In the United States, for instance, and other places too. So that was, although Marx did have a great deal of vision, many things that he said have turned out to be not true. And I suppose I have used the word somewhere that they are the metaphysicians of the new age.
And it intrigued me to find that you applied the term metaphysician to the communist.
I suppose I did so, thinking of them as persons who are always arguing ideologies and theoretical applications of what will happen in theory, regardless of fact.
The reason it interested me is because of the tendency in some areas, some quarters here in India, to underscore the renunciation of life. Now, I realize this gets into very long ideological and philosophical areas, but renunciation of life doesn't square with fact either, does it?
No, it can only apply to individuals, not to large groups. And I suppose the whole idea of renunciation is good after certain basic necessities are supplied, are met. Today, the idea of renunciation to a poverty-stricken people is absurd.
Of course.
Because they've renounced everything, they have very little left.
Yes. Well, that would represent a minority of thought. But you have many minorities of thought here in India. And indeed, the basis of partition in 47 was keyed, wasn't it, to that division of minority?
Yes, it was. It was based on religious minority and various other things also added on to it, but mainly religious minority, who were afraid of India becoming free and they remaining a minority. They didn't like that idea at all.
Well, now you and Mr. Gandhi and Mr. Jinnah, you were all involved at that point, or before the point of independence and then partition, in the fight for independence of India from British domination.
Mr. Jinnah was not involved in the fight for independence at all. In fact, he opposed it. The Muslim League was started about 1911, I think. It was started really by the British, encouraged by them so as to create factions in our ranks. They did succeed to some extent. And ultimately, there came the partition.
Now, had you and Mr. Gandhi been in favor of that?
Mr. Gandhi was not in favor of it right to the end. Even when it came, he was not in favor of it. I was not in favor of it either. But ultimately, I decided, like others did, many others, It is better to have partition than this constant trouble. And you see, the leaders of the Muslim League were big landlords and the like, who did not like land reform. We were very anxious to have land reform, which we did have afterwards. And that was one reason that we agreed to partition, because we thought that if they remained with us, apart from this trouble continuing, they would oppose our measures, many of our measures, and we said it's better to have a part of India and go ahead with our program of reforms, etc., than to be tied up with those leaders who would come in the way of these reforms.
And yet you had had many, many centuries of fraternal living with the Muslims here in India, hadn't you?
Yes, many hundreds of years, and on the whole there were fraternal living. Occasionally there was trouble, but on the whole there was. It was a religious concept more than anything. The Hindus were not and are not a proselytizing race. They didn't care very much what the other party did. While the Muslims were keen on proselytizing and getting converts. In fact, nearly all the Muslims in India are descendants of Hindus. The only handful came from outside.
So they did actually succeed in proselytizing.
Well, they did, only to a small extent, relatively small extent, about less than a quarter of the people, after hundreds and hundreds of years of this.
How many Muslims are there now in India?
Don't exactly know, but over 50 million.
Well, that makes you, what, the second or third largest Muslim state?
It is the third largest state.
Well, it's very hard for an outsider to understand that as the basis for partition, Mr. Nehru, that there would still be 50 millions or more Muslims in India, if indeed the separation between Hindu and Muslim was the basis.
How could you separate them? They live in every village. It's not one compact area where they live. The majority was in what is Pakistan now. But in every village all over India, there are Hindus and Muslims living together. It meant a tremendous uprooting of all these people. That was one of the objections to partition.
Well, now you have that in microcosm, don't you, in Kashmir?
No, not in that sense, because in Kashmir, the majority was and is Muslim.
But it's still a mixture.
It is a mixture, but the majority in Kashmir itself, in the valley of Kashmir, the Muslims are in a great majority.
And yet the state, which was one of the princely states, acceded to India rather than to Pakistan.
Yes. The accession took place when Pakistan invaded India, or rather Pakistan helped people, the tribal people, to invade India.
Oh, you mean that part of India, of Jammu and Kashmir?
Yes, Jammu and Kashmir. And the people of Kashmir resisted this invasion. That is, not only the Maharaja who was there, but the others, the National Conference, which is quite apart from our National Congress, resisted it. That is, the Muslims resisted it.
The Muslims themselves resisted it.
They resisted it. And then they asked to be allied to India, and both the Maharaja and the National Conference there. And we agreed. It was, before that, it was doubtful which way they'd turn. They agreed, and then we had to sent some troops there to defend them from these tribal raiders. And for about a year, 14 months or so, this thing went on. Then there was a ceasefire.
Now, at that time, Mr. Nehru, was there any talk of plebiscite for the people of Kashmir?
There was no talk as such. I declared that, I don't think I used the word plebiscite, but that the people of Kashmir will decide this, which way they will go. Then, in spite of that, the leaders of Pakistan then rejected that to begin with.
Rejected the plebiscite?
Rejected it, yes. And then there was a ceasefire and all that, and the UN came in and they produced a resolution which did mention the plebiscite, and they stated various steps that should be taken before that took place. Among the steps was the Pakistan troops should be withdrawn from Kashmir wholly. We, India, had to reduce our numbers because they accepted the fact of accession to India and said we would be responsible for law and order and all that.
Who would be responsible?
India would be responsible for law and order, therefore should keep some troops there, though they would be reduced. Well, ever since then, Pakistan has not withdrawn its troops from that area. And because that was not done, the question of plebiscite did not arise then. And after waiting for a year or two, then Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, had wanted to go ahead with their constitution. They formed a constituent assembly elected by the people of that area. The constituent assembly confirmed the accession to India and made some reforms, land reforms, etc., which were fairly far-reaching. We have had 3 general elections in the last dozen years or so. And the assembly there has been elected by adult franchise by all the people, and they are functioning there. Later, the elections were held later under the auspices of our election commissioner here to see that they were fair. Because our election commissioner, it's well recognized, he's not under the orders of government. He can do things what he likes, more or less. The president appoints him. And ever since then, they've had autonomy in their state, which they have now, and they carry on the government of the state.
Why has India consistently refused a plebiscite in the last number of years?
Well, to begin with, these general elections that we've had there 3 times in the last dozen years are themselves a kind of plebiscite. Secondly, in a plebiscite, or even in elections, if people are allowed to come there from Pakistan, hordes of them will come across to Kashmir as it is. And it'll be difficult to keep them there as it is. There's a tendency for them to come over because economic conditions are somewhat better on this side than on the other. And we are a little afraid of the consequences of such an expression of opinion, because it's probably not be based on political or economic factors, but purely on religion. And the result may be disastrous in Kashmir itself and in the rest of India.
Well, how do you mean that, Mr. Nehru?
Well, I mean, if they vote on the basis of religion, then people of a contrary religion will be pushed out or will be afraid of continuing there. There will be migrations as there were originally between India and Pakistan. And that would create trouble in both countries. If the division was to take place, Hindu and Muslim, then the Muslims in numerous villages of India and towns and villages will feel rather unhappy. I mean, say, they won't feel as full citizens of India. Now,
They are treated as full citizens. Are they represented in the government?
they are represented. Our vice president is a very eminent Muslim scholar. In our cabinet there are 2 Muslims. Other members are also in the government. And our ambassadors are Muslims. In our army there are plenty of Muslims, Muslim officers.
In the top echelon?
I'm not sure how many there are, but there are some in the top echelons. And you see, this partition was an extraordinary thing. It separated families. Now, there are plenty of people in India with their relatives on the other side and vice versa. We have ambassadors, our ambassadors, Muslims as our ambassadors abroad. Their brothers are ambassadors of Pakistan. In the army too, same applies. Some generals here, their brothers or cousins are on the other side.
Well, Mr. Nehru, Kashmir is, of course, the crux of the difficulties between India and Pakistan, but it isn't the only difficulty between the two countries. How do you see the problems between you and your neighbor resolved, where the tensions seem to be so high?
Well,
they don't seem to be lessening, quite the contrary.
We have suggested several times that we should have a no-war declaration between the two. That will not solve the problems, but it will produce an atmosphere which is better able to deal with these problems. But Pakistan refuses to have a no-war declaration.
On what grounds?
I don't know. I suppose they think that if they have a no-war declaration, it means freezing the situation as it is. We have told them that nothing is frozen. We go on discussing it, but we will not solve it by war. This or any problem. We can go on discussing any problem we may have and come to decisions about it in other ways.
I know that you made a visit to Pakistan in the last number of years.
I happen to be popular in Pakistan before partition and now. In fact, my mother came from Pakistan.
Oh, did she? From what city?
From Lahore. She was in Lahore. My childhood I went to Pakistan many times. Now, another grave difficulty is that Pakistan has allied herself more or less with China. Pakistan's close association with China over the frontier, in the frontier treaty that they have made with China, they've agreed to a portion of Kashmir, west of Ladakh, being handed over to China, which they had no business to do. That is, according to them, if Kashmir is still unsettled, they had no business to do that.
Well, now, the Chinese action, of course, was a great blow to you, I know, because you had counted on the power of friendship, which I know you felt you expressed to the Chinese, and indeed were criticized by many quarters of the world, including my own countrymen, for maintaining this spirit of friendship. Why do you think the Chinese acted as they did, Mr. Nehru?
That is more than I can say why they acted that way. But for several years before last year, when they actually invaded on a large scale, our relations had become tenser and tenser. In Ladakh, they had gradually creeping in. Why they did it last year, I suppose, principally, they were annoyed with us because Dalai Lama is here, because about 30,000 refugees had come from Tibet, and we had given them shelter and we were helping them. And principally because they wanted the Asian world to realize that they are the top dogs in Asia. And any country that is in Asia should remember that. And
well, there has been an ebbing and a flowing of Chinese power down through the centuries.
Yes.
Do you think they have something of a superiority complex?
They have very much that. They've always had it, even when they're not strong, even then they've had it. They consider all the others, well, as uncivilized compared to themselves.
But what do you do about a power with the potential of China in the nuclear age, when collision will be inevitable unless they're contained? How do you deal with that?
We have to deal with it by strengthening ourselves to avoid such a collision and to meet it when it comes.
Do you feel that you can develop your own military power in time?
Having regard to the distance of our frontier from their central China itself, I would say there's a problem of logistics for them to bring to Tibet, to our frontier, everything from a distance of several thousand miles. And we have, although it's difficult terrain for us, we have not so far to go. So we can defend ourselves. We don't intend to invade China, go there. That's entirely opposed to our thinking. But we can stop them from coming to India.
Well, now, if this superiority complex maintains and their strength increases, not only vis-a-vis India, but even in the nuclear direction, how do you see any possible containment of them in the future? Do you think the United States and the Soviet Union, along with India, would be able to contain them?
I can't say look far into the future, but they are dangerous from that point of view. And I suppose the immediate problem is one of food for their people. They have to get food from Australia, Canada, and other places. And their population is increasing at a rapid rate, more rapid than ours.
Yes.
That is a problem for us, but it's much more so for them. And possibly these difficulties will make them more peaceful.
Well, in spite of the invasion, in spite of their intransigence, you still favor their admission to the United Nations.
I do, because I think that their isolation, first of all, you can't have, let us say, disarmament, any agreement or disarmament with China out of it. That is obvious. And all the major issues, I suppose they will tone down somewhat in future, especially if they are in the UN. Now what is happening today, many Western countries like England, France, and others are developing trade contacts with them.
Are you in favor of that?
Well, I'm not, to be quite frank. I don't like these countries with their trade contacts. They would favor China. But I don't want the Chinese people to die of hunger.
But that's what I was coming to, and I knew that you had to say something along that line, Mr. Nehru, because that's the example of your life.
Yes, but I don't want any war material to go to them from other places. And as for their becoming strong in the nuclear age, well, as a matter of fact, I do think that we are more advanced in India in atomic energy than they are.
Really?
Only today, I signed, I was present at the signing of an agreement with Canada.
On what basis? Yes.
No, they're building a civil station for atomic energy to be used for civil purposes. A few days ago, we signed another agreement with the United States for the same, for another station. And we have fairly good, very good young men who are doing this work, young scientists. They're quite brilliant, some of them. So the only thing is that we are determined not to turn this into, for war purposes, not to use nuclear weapons for war purposes. We don't make atomic bombs. I don't think we will. It's anybody's guess what might happen if China had them. Anyhow, that'll take a long time. Even if she got one originally to begin with, she'd have to have them in sufficient quantities would take many, many years.
How do you feel about the present relationship between the United States and the Soviet Union?
It's certainly better than it was, and I hope it will continue that, and they'll gradually develop further contacts with each other.
What effect does this then have on the so-called neutrals throughout the world? And I say so-called because I know you don't like the word neutral.
I should say they approve of it. Most of them, I don't know about everybody, most of them like it, because ultimately war and peace depends today, big war and peace, on the United States and the Soviet Union. A nuclear war, I mean. And anything that lessens the danger of a war of that type is to be welcomed. And this does lessen it.
Do you think that that lessens the necessity for another Bandung conference, which has been given prominence in recent days?
The Bandung conference, if it was held today, would not succeed as the first one did, because there are too many points of difference between the countries that would come there. The other conference that is suggested is a conference of non-aligned nations.
Such as the Belgrade Conference.
Such as the Belgrade one. That is certainly better. It has more contacts with each other the countries would have. But that will, I think, exclude China and Pakistan, who are not non-aligned.
Well, that's why I wonder what effect you think Pakistan's alignment with China is going to produce for her as a neighbor of yours. I believe she stated that even if the Kashmir problem was solved and China attacked you, she would not come to your defense.
Yes, they said something like that, that even if the Kashmir problem and other problems with India were solved, even then they would continue their friendship with China and not help us to face China.
And between the two of you, since they refused to sign a no-war pledge, it certainly extends the atmosphere of unfriendliness, if not potential conflict. And yet any kind of armed conflict between you and Pakistan would really have the gravest repercussions for both of you, wouldn't it?
Yes, undoubtedly it would. We hope that will not happen. So sometimes President Ayub Khan says also. But still, see, their whole mentality is based on fear and hatred of India. Now, fear and hatred both are very undesirable things to have. And they first relied on the Western countries to make them strong so as to meet India on the battlefield, you might say. When they found that went far, but didn't quite go as far as they wanted it to go, Then they turned towards China, and I think President Ayub said in some places that he was sorry he didn't take advantage of the moment of the Chinese invasion of India to attack India.
And yet you still feel that you must press and continue to press
Well, we
for
have
peaceful solution of these problems.
Yes, we have to, and Pakistan being what it is, India and Pakistan have to be friends, have to cooperate as independent countries. Because remember that throughout history, the area that is Pakistan, much of it, was not a separate country. I mean, South India was, but North India and Pakistan, geographically, historically, linguistically, they're the same language as we have here.
Yes.
Culturally, there are so many common things. And it's just foolish for this tension to continue between the two of us. And I think it's bound to go down. As a matter of fact, from the people's point of view, there's not too much tension. If our people go there, theirs come here, they are welcome, they talk about old friends and all that. It's more a political thing at the top, occasionally made worse by religious issues being brought to bear upon it.
But do you feel that there is any personal enmity between you and President Ayub?
I have none. But he has recently said many times that I am coming in the way of India and Pakistan being together, cooperating. There is no question of a personal enmity between us. I have many friends in Pakistan. They come here sometimes, we meet them, friendly way.
Mr. Nehru, in 1958, when I came here to make a film with you, the first thing we talked about was your retirement, because you tried to retire in the summer of '58, as you remember, and the country wouldn't let you. And I asked you then if you were going to try again, and you said you had no plans for retirement at that point. Does that still hold?
More or less, yes. I have no plans, but I suppose I can't go on indefinitely.
You seem to be. But how do you feel about the stewardship of India beyond your term as Prime Minister?
Well, somebody will come on, take it. Matter of fact, it's if I nominated somebody, as people seem to expect, that is the shortest way of his not being that. People will be jealous of him, dislike him. And just like Winston Churchill, more or less nominated, what's his name?
Anthony Eden.
Anthony Eden. He didn't last long. It's best to leave it to the people then who can choose. They can choose. They'll naturally choose within a circle of people who are close to us.
It's not possible, apparently, to think of India without you at the helm.
Well, people will have to think of it anyhow.
Well, people do think of it, and they continually wonder about successor. But particularly in the press in the United States in the last number of months, there have been so many recurring reports to the effect that your daughter, Mrs. Gandhi, is being groomed as your successor. And that's a fascinating thought.
It may be fascinating for some people, but it is a very unlikely thing. I know that she doesn't want it at all to happen. And I'm certainly not grooming her for anything.